Okay, that's enough. That's enough. Don't clap more when he's up here than it's just me. All right, my very special guest and my friend, Mr. Doug Keck. He is President and Chief Operating Officer over at EWTN. So in essence, he is, you could say he's my boss, and I'm not going to be starstruck or anything.
We practiced that before.
We did
the
practice
show.
this, yes.
That's very well. Good.
Doug, you were big into secular New York media. That was your career, years. And then you met some little nun, drug you to EWTN with her look. How'd that happen?
Well, I wouldn't say I was big in it. I mean, I was in it for a number of years. I grew up in New York, and so I did work in the early days of cable television. I worked on American Movie Classics, Bravo, a bunch of other different networks, including the Playboy Channel, and 25 different ones in all, regional sports networks, including Sports Channel Ohio, which is out here.
You didn't say you were big in it, then you just named seven of them.
Well, I'm just saying these are the things I worked on, and so yeah, it was exciting. I got to work with the New York Yankees, and that might not be popular here, but to deal with Mickey Mantle and other things when he was one of our announcers. So I was very blessed to get a lot of opportunities in the early part of my career to work on a lot of very exciting television operations, and I actually started in radio.
How to EWTN? How'd you get there?
Marriage Encounter. We went on a marriage encounter weekend, and it basically clicked from my wife and myself that we realized, and I certainly realized, because right before we went on the marriage encounter weekend, our friends had invited us to go. This was in '89. I remember thinking for some reason, I thought, well, I'll go on this thing. I like to pontificate, you know, we can have meetings, I can explain my great philosophies of life or whatever to everybody. That's not what a marriage encounter is at all about. It's a very powerful weekend for those who've gone on it. And being there on the weekend, you just realized, and right before it, I said, you know, all of a sudden it popped in my head, and that seems just something that happened to me. It was kind of like, gee, what about God? Where's he been? And so it was kind of like, oh. And so after that, it just clicked for us, and from there I went on like a Curcio, and that kind of focused me on my faith. And then I started watching this strange channel with this nun on it, and you know, I became like Scott Hahn used to call a tapeworm, you know, getting tapes and things like that. And I used to record overnight EWTN on a VHS tape because it wasn't on all the time on Long Island where I was living, and then I dubbed them over to cassette. And then when I worked around the house or worked in the yard or whatever, I would just listen to it, and you know, I have no theological background or anything like that. Everything I've learned is either by listening to tapes or reading the books I've read over the last 20 years for doing the BookMark show.
Do you need a series of mine? I mean, I can send it to you if you don't have one.
Yeah, I use it when I'm looking to go to sleep. I found that it comes in very handy.
Okay, so terrific.
That's
okay.
Right. That's right.
Your son, now first of all, I don't want to skip over how you got involved with EWTN.
Right,
I mean, you met Mother.
Well, really what happened was over a period of time, I worked in cable television. I'd go to the national shows, and one day I said, well, gee, they must be at one of the shows. So I kind of went to one of the shows and saw EWTN had a booth, and I connected with some people, and I thought, well, maybe when I retire or something like that, I might be able to do something like that. But we just found that my wife and I had been a marriage encounter team, and we already had our son, and we had our daughter then in 1990, and we just started to feel that there was something else out there. I remember being at this thing in San Francisco for Sports Channel, and them saying Sports Channel is going to be #1 in whatever 1996 and 95, and I remember thinking, I really don't care if it's #1 in 1996. I'd rather cover the Pope or something by then. You know, that's kind of where I was at. And I've had, and if people read the section I wrote in the book, there's incidents where I was a pretty slow learner, and God, you know, bumped me on the head a few times to get me to realize that maybe I was being called to Birmingham, Alabama, which may seem like another world to you here in North Canton, but I can tell you it seems like 3 worlds away when you live in New York.
I remember reading the book. By the way, the book is Special Children, Blessed Fathers. Doug's got a chapter in the book. At age 4, your son, you took him for professional diagnosis, and at that point you were looking at it like a lot of us dads do. He's okay, he's not coming along as quick as I'd like him to.
ADD, we thought he was ADD.
Yeah.
NOS or whatever. You know.
And then when the diagnosis hit you.
Yeah, well, we were actually heading out to a marriage encounter. We were giving a weekend, and we stopped by to see the doctor, and the doctor kind of hesitatingly said, well, I don't know, it's close. He says, but I think your son's autistic. And I was kind of like, whoa, okay. I didn't quite understand exactly the ramifications of that. But my wife, who was taken aback, had already kind of connected with Temple Grandin, having seen her on the Larry King Show, and had listened to the symptoms and talking about it, and had already started to think that maybe Matt was autistic in the back of my mind. I always poo-pooed it and said, you know, he's a little slow, he'll get better, he'll grow out of it. You know, he's talking to himself and things like that, but, you know, if he's talking to himself when he's 7 or 8, then I'll know there's a problem. Well, he's 32 years old, he's still talking to himself.
How did that shift your view of the faith, or how did it make it deeper?
Well, I think the biggest thing that having a special needs child, at least for me, first of all, I'm lucky enough to have an incredible wife who really deserves 99.9% of the credit. Six Sigma is my wife. She's the one who made it, as one friend described it, raised both of my children, including my son, and described him as being bathed in love, and that's why I think they're the great people that I think that they are. But I think for me, obviously, I think the biggest thing was, you know, realizing he's never going to play for the New York Yankees. I had gotten a book signed by Mickey Mantle to my son Matt, and I thought, oh great, I would have died when I was a kid to get something like that. And you know, it could have been Mickey Mouse to Matt. He really didn't care, as he told me, Dad, I'm not really big on sports, you know. And so you just kind of started to realize, and it's a slow process, I think, of realizing two things. One, what's really important. You start to see the world through their eyes, and they see the world the way it really is. You know, sometimes I like to say when people talk about reality television, I say EWTN is reality television, because that's really what's real. This other stuff, like before the show, talking about setting things up, or if you think television's real, but really much of it is staged, and you just realize that all these other things are ephemeral, they're temporal, they're there and they're gone, and you win an award or you do this, and then nobody cares. And what really matters is the people and the relationships. And the great thing of our faith is it gives us insights into redemptive suffering, which was a great insight that obviously I think Mother Angelica gave for so many people, and certainly had an impact on our lives. And when we went down there to look about a job, I mean, what really committed us to it was when Mother just looked at my wife and said, you want to come. And as we talk about people who are just who they appear to be, Mother was that in spades. I mean, what you saw on TV, that's the person we dealt with off screen as well.
You talk in the book about the gospel according to Matty Boy.
Right.
What did this young man, as he moved through his special needs,
Right.
and not touching the things that would be part of normal development, okay?
Right.
Maybe not going out on dates, not being any kind of sports fanatic,
Yeah, right,
any
right.
of that stuff.
Yeah, socialization
Yeah.
issues and things
What,
like that.
what would he have taught you?
Well, one of the things that he taught me was in these, like the gospel according to Matty Boy, was kind of like he would watch Touched by an Angel, shows like that. He liked shows where he could see a strong moral lesson underneath things, and he would come up with his own versions of them that he would kind of write based on what he interpolated from what somebody else might have said on another show. Maybe not totally original, but kind of in his own words. And it was what my wife had done as part of in dealing with it, which was to get involved with the child at the level that they're dealing, and to realize in many cases that he was connecting with us, but in a different way. You know, his way of jargoning is to use lines from TV shows to fill in where he can't have that communication. So he'll take standard phrases and use them. Did you have a good day, Dad? You know, how was it? And I'll ask him, how was your day? Oh, up and down, up and down. You know, it's up and down. You know, because those are the phrases. And it's also great because we have a relationship like that, because he is an expert on voiceover actors in cartoons. He knows every voiceover actor in the world. And I'm an old movie buff. That's how I ended up working on the startup of AMC. And so we like to throw lines back and forth and things like that. So it's actually a lot of fun.
How have you deepened as a father, having a son that in some respects you're taking care of even into his 20s and 30s?
Right. Well, he lives with us, and he's going to be living with us. I mean, he doesn't drive. He might be able to drive. We haven't quite gotten to that. I mean, unfortunately, my poor wife has several chronic illnesses that she's dealing with herself now, and so, you know, we have that going on, and his situation. And in a lot of ways, as I told you, I mean, he's doing better than the rest of us. I mean, he went down there and he amazingly acclimated. You would think leaving, bringing an autistic child who's totally regime-oriented. Now he wants to know what's having for dinner every day, and if it changes or where we're going, that isn't always the easiest. And there's some examples of that when he was younger and nonverbal, where it was tough to figure out what was going on or why he was so upset. He kind of freaked out at the Bronx Zoo this one time, and we only found out later that when he got more verbal to say, you know, we went to another zoo in Birmingham, he said, "Dad, these animals stink, you know, I can't be around them."
The smell was overpowering his senses.
Because again, with the autism, it's not a low sensitivity, it's a hypersensitivity, which is why you get the clothes out. And we were lucky he went through something called auditory training, which again, helped him greatly with dealing with sound sensitivity. And the thing that is always difficult with dealing with children on the autism, which I'm sure you know better than me, is that they're also unique. And so what works for one doesn't work for another, and so there's no one way to do anything. You know what I mean? In some ways, it's like the church has a wonderful panoply of spiritualities, all different ways for people to connect that work better for them. And so for what might have worked in our family may not work for everybody else. And certainly there are a lot of children who are much more traditional, considered, you know, it used to be at one time if you were verbal, you weren't autistic. And you dealt with the refrigerator mother. We were at the end of the refrigerator mother theory, which was the reason your child's autistic is because the mother
cold, distant mother.
Right, exactly, which was based on bad studies done at a university or something like that. And more it's come on, and obviously there's more people experiencing to be on the spectrum, you know, whether it be an Asperger's or his. We're lucky with him is because he's a very friendly, easygoing guy, and he's tough not to like. And we've been blessed. One of the great blessings of working for EWTN is he gets to work at the EWTN Religious Catalogs warehouse, and he gets to work with, and I'll just say, the wonderful people who've been called by God to work at EWTN, including at the Religious Catalog, and he does great, and he leads he does the chaplet in the afternoon, 3 o'clock, he's the king of the chaplet. And because I only play the rosary at home because my son wants to play the rosary. And he does the readings every night because he wants to do the readings. I'm a real slacker next to him. I always tell him, listen, Matt, when you die and you're up very close to God, look in the back and wave, you may see me.
That's cool. God bless. I was looking forward to you coming. And I have met Matt, and he's a delightful young man.